Hey guys, welcome back to Jazz Guitar Lessons. So here I want to give you a quick tip on how to add motion to your jazz guitar comping. Meaning that if we have a song such as All of Me, in which I have the C major chord, or C major 7 or C6, and then I have an E7, because they last so long, the question is, what do we do in between? Do we simply sit on a chord and strum, or do we vary? And what should we do when we vary? Should we learn all the inversions? Should we do walking bass? Should we do half-step approaches? So here, I want to give you 3 basic options for doing that, from simple all the way to more advanced, and a 4th bonus tip, that's going to be at the end, on how to really ramp up the chord motion within static chords within songs. So let's get going. Alright, tip number 1, and I picked All of Me that has a C major chord for 2 straight bars, so 8 beats of the same chord. One solution would just be to go Charleston 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but that gets pretty boring. The half step approach is the first step. So you can either go below and climb up into the chord, or you can be from above. And the good news for guitarists is that we can keep the exact same chord fingering and just go into the chord we're aiming at. That's a pretty sensible, easy solution to do. And the great news for guitarists is that number 1, we can keep the same fingering, so it's pretty easy to achieve that, versus if we look at a piano player, which would have to struggle with different fingerings. On the instrument, for us, we keep the fingering static and we nail it. So an example of the first 4 bars of All of Me would be something like this. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see there's already a lot of strumming, a lot of motions for free for these 2 chords. And bonus point about the half step approach is if it's done properly and you're doing a half step above the destination chord. So in this case I go D flat and I land into my C6. Which is a staple shape, by the way. If you're not familiar with the staple, you can join the fellowship for free. That's step 1. Basically get all the sheet music, all the community, all the video submissions, and it's my basic step-by-step approach to mastering standards. Link in description. So when I do a staple like this and I go here, my D flat will be heard by our ears for free as a tritone sub. So there's another video here about tritone subs, which basically means our ears will pick up on a 5-1 motion. So instead of hearing D flat C, we will hear G7 this C. And that's just happening naturally because of the way the chords work together. So I'm not going to get into detail about this, but half step from above is a really, really great tool. Let's move on. Another thing I like to propose to my students when they want to add chord motion is to pivot to another known chord of the same name. So I'll give you a really good example. So if I have my A minor 7 here, which is a staple also, I have another form of A minor 7 that's really close by that I call A minor 9, that's right here on the top 4 strings. So if I had 2 bars or 4 bars of A minor, I could comp, right, combining the half step approach on it. So it's pivoting to another version of the chord, but not necessarily an inversion, because I know some of you want to do like the full Barry Harris approach and learn all the different possibilities of all chords. It can be useful, but just pragmatically adding motion within a chord can be really, really useful. For instance, if I did my All of Me again, I would maybe comp this one and then go to this guy, which I know to be a C major 6-9, or I could also go, which is that's another C major, or even the last one I could go C major 9 like this, and that's C major 7. So I could always go to 2 different versions, not 12. I could just go to 2 different versions of the same chord and alternate and add maybe a half step or a half step above below approach and just comp it with an interesting rhythm. That's going to add a ton of motion and a ton of interest to your comping. So let's move on to the next tip. All right, 3rd and favorite tip of mine is adding an inner voice movement to our chord. So this is pretty simple, also in the staple cheat sheet found on the fellowship. So if I have a C major 6 or a C6 like this, what I can do is make one voice, one element of the chord move to the next element of the chord. In this case, I would pick that E note and make it come down to the D note. So go. So imagine if I comp the 2 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. Already our ears will pick up on which is pretty amazing. And also I could do C major 7 like that, the plain, the good old one, and then go. So I could go And already there, I'm still playing a certain version of a C major chord, but I'm allowing myself to move inside of the voices. So that's a good example for a major chord. For the next chord in the song of All of Me would be an E7. So what I could do is play the E7 or E9 like this, right? And then I could say, well, and that segues into the pro tip, the bonus tip at the end, I could also do a sharp 9 and or a flat 9. So this adds a lot of motion, and that is actually the top voice. So interestingly, even if I had another way to voice that chord with notes on the top and at the bottom, I can make move any notes inside. So I'll give you the example. Again, for the C would be this one. And for the other C, so I love this 5th string root here, I go, which is also pretty good. And there's other combinations, but that's my own favorite, because when I hear like really, really solid compers like Pat Metheny, this is what they would do. They don't necessarily go over all of the inversions of the chord, but what they sound like is like they're sitting on a certain chord and they make certain notes move within the chord. And of course it begs a question like, yeah, which notes move where exactly? So the question is that part of the scale? Is that part of going to the next chord? Is that a sound I want to hear? So the best thing to do is to experiment. Bonus tip, pro tip. So this is actually the 4th way of looking at chords that's a bit more complicated. So if I'm looking at a song like All of Me, for which we'll have 2 bars of C and then we'll have 2 bars of E7, one of the best ways to add motion is to use altered dominants. So there's another video about here. You can click on the link or see link in the description. And the point here is when we have a chord that goes up a 4th. So I'm playing C, then I go to E, so C, D, E, that's not up a 4th, okay, E, and then my next chord after that is an A7 of sorts. So from E to A, there's a 4th, A, B, C, D. I go up a 4th, and thus I can make the E7 be an E7 altered, meaning I can make it sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 5, flat 5, and or any combination of those. It can get pretty daunting, so what I recommend is just hitting the regular chord right on the beat when it's happening, and towards the resolution to the next chord up a 5th, then I would start to alter it. Pretty simple. So let me go slow from C to E7 into A. So on C, 1, 2, 3, 4, to an E9, E7 sharp 9, right? We heard that transition, E7 sharp 9 into the A13. I could also add some of the top strings or have other inner voices move for the E7. So for instance, I go 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Right, so in this case it was a sharp 9, sharp 5 on the E, but feel free to experiment with the different notes that you consider. You find your 9th, you find your 5th, and then you go, oh, this can move. And the fun thing is, it can move in any direction so long as it's resolved properly. So it's more of an advanced tip, but the good news is, even if the chart itself doesn't say E7 sharp 9, or the chart doesn't say a flat 5, I'm allowed to do that as a jazz guitar comper, because I can add motion wherever I want, basically. And especially if I can resolve this well, and make it make sense in the light of the next chord, it's beautiful. So one of my mentors, Gary, used to say, now supercharge your chords. And I'm like, okay, but when? It's like, well, you go up a 4th. When do I go up a 4th? And it's like, well, blues, man. You know, you're playing blues. Say I play the blues in the key of C. I'm going to sit on this C for a long time. And then eventually I'm going to go to F, right? So I can do to that C basically anything in the bar preceding the F. So I can make it a C7 flat 13, flat 13 flat 9, flat 13 sharp 9, flat 5, flat 5, flat 9, or any other combinations. And so long as I supercharge it and that there's a point in which it will be resolved, then everything will be good. And the point is, as soon as I got that, I found out that 70 to 80% of all chord progressions are going in a cycle of 4ths, which meant that basically anytime I'm doing that, I can play an altered dominant. Of course, it's like spice. If I put too much salt, too much pepper, too much cayenne pepper, too much whatever, it's not going to taste as good, but it can be a really good tool to draw upon, and that's a bonus tip. So in leaving this video, I want to provide you with a quick demo. So I'm going to play All of Me on the screen, so you know exactly where I'm at with the chord, and I'm going to do a round of really simple comping in which I will add chord motion, the half step, the pivoting, the altered dominance, the inner voice movement, everything I talked about in this video, I will just sort of demonstrate it, and you can leave me any comments here for questions you have about this. I will see you soon on jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. Thanks. Thank you.